Hello and good afternoon. Thank you for attending today's webinar. Today we're going to be looking at the solid edge wire and harness design, symbols and parts, library, and administration functionality available within the solid edge electrical design application. Recently, I have released a few other solid edge electrical webinar focused topics on the solid edge electrical design introduction and overview, along with how to take advantage of the solid edge electrical connected mode functionality to bring your ECAD and MCAD worlds together. And recently I detailed the new layout panel design module that's introduced in solid edge electrical design 2021, so you can better collaborate. So if you haven't already, go ahead and check out those videos on the Prolim YouTube page if you haven't already. A little bit about myself, if this is your first time seeing one of our webinars. My name is Aaron Creech, and I have over 20 years of end-user design engineering experience. During that time, I've worked in the manufacturing, architectural, and automotive design industries. I built a pretty strong working knowledge of the most popular 3D design softwares out there, such as Inventor, CATIA, SolidWorks, several Autodesk products, and obviously Solid Edge. As I mentioned, I'm currently a senior Solid Edge application engineer with a focus on mechanical and electrical CAD design platforms. My career interests include generative design, additive manufacturing, and process improvement, or Kaizen. So for our agenda today, we're going to go ahead and look at the highlights. We're going to highlight the different types of installation methods available within the solid edge electrical design and the process of installing each kind of scenario. We'll be taking a look at the general purposes of the solid edge electrical symbols and parts environment. I will also explain what types of parts and symbols are maintained in the solid edge electrical libraries. And then we'll take a look at the tools that are used in the downstream electrical design process. And then we'll do a quick Q&A at the end. I just ask that you save all your questions to the end of this presentation, and then we'll get to all your questions you may have. The solid edge electrical design flow usually starts with customers creating a wiring diagram first, where the devices have mated connectors, and those connectors are interconnected with wires, splices, multi-cores, and inlines. Those wire designs are then used to create the harness designs, which include all of the physical details such as clips and grommets, tapes and tubes, along with the details of the electrical designs themselves. Wires are then terminated into terminals. We add those terminals and plugs and seals, and we make sure everything is sized and connected properly. All of this is managed in the underpinned by our data management system, or the embedded database. For wiring designs, we want to have the approved connectors that mate with the approved devices, and we can add specific details to the wiring as we go. In the harness area, we want to be able to choose the appropriate tapes and tubes, clips, grommets, and all the details of the connectors and their cavities, wires, terminals, plugs, and seals. These all need to be fed by the suppository of standard parts. Solid edge electrical parts, we can model and all the devices and their IOs and electrical characteristics along with them. We can also model the available connectors and cavities along with all the physical details of the tapes, tubes, and grommets. Now let's talk about a little bit of the administration of the software first. So once you deploy the installation link and you're in the installation manager, and after you agree to the license agreement, we need to determine which installation type is required. And I'll kind of just overview these for you real quick. There are two install types included in the solid edge electrical design application. So you have the complete, which is the one-tier install, or think of it as a standalone application. It's an instance of the design application, electrical manager, and the embedded database, or the library, all installed onto one single workstation. This is ideal for a single user, preliminary testing in the environment, and or learning the application. This option is selected by choosing the complete installation type that I have highlighted here in the download configurator. So the next option is the Tier 2 installation, or network install, also considered custom here. This is ideal for multiple users that want to share a common database of projects, symbols, components, and user privileges. This is best for project collaboration across users, teams, and facilities. This option is selected by choosing the custom installation type in the download configurator, as you see here. So we'll note here that the only only one of these installation download, you only have one installation download link for all these different situations. So you can use one download link to do either the 1-tier or the 2-tier. You can use the same installation download to install the database to your server as well as a design application or users' computers. The embedded database does not need to be installed on each of the user's machines if you're doing the 2-tier network communication, only the application itself. So for instance, we would on the server would be the first installation. It's recommended that that's where you start. So you use the same installation link, and here you would just choose to install the Solid Edge Electric Manager if you only wanted to have the database installed on the server itself. Some cases, well, we have many customers that actually, if their CAD administrator is also their server administrator, they might want to install a version of the Solid Edge Electrical Design software and the Electrical Manager on the server so they can access and control all of that information in the server environment. And again, you just use this same installation link on all of the users' computers. Then you would just unselect the Electrical Manager here and just download the Solid Edge Wire and Harness Design to all the client machines or their user computers. So in the next step, you would locate the location for the installation of the application folders and image files that will be stored. Now it's important, there's the next page after this install folder where you put the application. The next folder basically goes in the same location, the C, program file, Siemens, Solid Edge Wire and Harness Design, but there's a / images folder. So any image that you want to use, say a company logo or maybe the image of a symbol or some sort of image, in order for Solid Edge Electrical Design to read that image and have access to that image, it has to be specified in that images folder within the Solid Edge Wiring Harness Design application folder. So just side note there. And then finally, we're going to choose whether or not we want to install an empty database or the starter database. Highly encouraged to always just start with the load starter data information. It contains over 4,000 and growing symbols and parts from the IEC, ANSI, and transportation industry standards. And then, the next page after this one, I don't have a highlight of this one here, but once you choose the starter data, you hit next, and then that window will show you which default industry you want to choose. So whether it's IEC or ANSI or transportation. But just another side note here that if you chose to do IEC and then you find out later down the road that most of your symbols are in the ANSI industrial standards, you can always change that after the installation is complete. So I'll kind of show you that briefly in a demonstration where you can access all that stuff. But just keep that in mind that you can always go back and change it without having to do a whole new install to get access to those other industry standard templates. So there are 3 models that are available inside of the Solid Edge embedded database that are kind of important to note. So we kind of mentioned the electrical symbols, we have mentioned the electrical parts, and then the user profile. So those are the 3 main pillars. The Solid Edge electrical symbols library is the home for all the predefined industry standard symbols, devices, and borders. We also call those title blocks. So borders and title blocks are basically the same thing. These components in the starter database library can be copied, edited, and newly created exclusively within the symbols library user interface. Symbol drawing tools are available within the symbols and borders library to easily and efficiently design custom components to your design, or even add to current symbols that are in the library. So 2 is the Solid Edge parts library, which allows you to create a complex set of attribute data for any component, then reuse it multiple designs and diagrams without the need of ever having to enter that same data over and over again. And then finally, the Solid Edge electrical user module allows the administrator to set up permissions for each user with access or limited access to the embedded database. So let's take a look at the symbol elements a little closer first. So there are 9 primary elements to a symbol. The first one is the symbol name. This is the name that appears in the symbol browser when you're searching for it within the library. Pretty simple. The second one is the insertion point. The insertion point marker is the origin point of the symbol that will be used when you design the initial symbol, and then also when you bring that into a diagram. That's going to be the origin point for the diagram when you pull it back into a diagram. Then the symbol body is the geometry that makes up the graphical elements of the symbol. So it's the geometry creating the symbol, which are created by the lines and the rectangles and circles that we'll see here in a moment in the drawing tools. Then we have the graphical properties. These are the graphical attributes of the symbol's body. So for instance, the color, the line thickness, font styles, etc. The pins are points designated on the symbols to connect them electrically to the connectors and conductors. Then we have the pin properties, which are the attributes that describe the pin functional characteristics. And then we have the general properties that are the properties that describe the symbol characteristics themselves. And then we have the name, text, location. That's the placeholder for the text that represents specific symbol instances when placed in the diagram. And then finally, we have the graphical text, and this is used for illustration or documentation purposes. So let's go ahead and look at a quick demo of this. Go ahead and open up Solid Edge Electrical real quick. And then I've got a design open here, but let's go ahead and just start from scratch. So basically, I'm just going to go ahead and open up an existing project. And again, these are all just the projects that have been installed with the starter data. So if I pick empty database, I wouldn't have access to these kind of sample files to start me out. So I'm going to go ahead and select and as you can see here, even though I only did the IEC loaded database, I still have access to the ANSI and the Quick Start. But there's some back-end accessible options and features I have simply specific to the IEC database because I've selected that in the beginning of the install. Let's go ahead and look at the machinery IEC database. I'm just going to open up this quick machine sample. I'm just going to open up page 1 diagram. And here we just have a simple 2D wire design. So let's go ahead and explore. We'll go over to our Solid Edge tab, and we're going to go ahead and explore these 3 applications or tools that we have access to. So I'm going to go to the Solid Edge tab, Launch, and I'm going to launch. From here, I can launch either the electrical symbols or electrical part. And then I would have access to this Users tab if I were at Administrator privileges. Let's go ahead and look at the electrical symbol first. And it's important to note here that I'm accessing it through the design software. But as you'll see here in a second, I'm actually going to open up a whole new environment. It's opening them off screen here. I'll pull it over as soon as it's done launching. There we go. So as you can see, I still have the diagram open in the background in the design application, but now here I have a second window, and this is specific to the electrical symbols. So this is the electrical symbols library. This is the access to it. So as you can see, I have a couple of quick features here. I can open up an existing library, or I can create a new library, and we'll kind of walk through both of these here. But we'll start with just opening up the library at first. And then again, we can see that we can kind of pull from any of these predefined libraries. And it's important to note here that if you're not familiar with this application already, that this is also the location where you would access the Borders library. So again, the Borders library is where you would create and maintain your title blocks, your images that go within your title blocks. And there are even, if you lay the panel layout, if you use the panel layout functionality, this is where you would also save those backgrounds of the electrical component cabinet. So again, they're not electrically defined, they're not devices, but they're basically just background reference geometry that you would save into the Borders library to then pull in or use as a kind of your frame for your panel layout design. But we're just going to look at the symbols library for now. I'm going to go open up this Quick Start IEC library. And then just at first glance here, you can see I've got this pull down here. And then here are just hundreds, if not thousands, of individual parts that are already compartmentalized by default here just with the system installation. So I can, I've got batteries here, all of my brakes and clutches are here. And again, this is just looking at the IEC. So if you're not finding your components that you need in this, you always have the ability to go back and then look in the IEC or the ANSI Quick Starter library. You can look at the transportation, the drafting. There's several different types of things that you can look at here and pull from. So one really cool thing here is if you don't know if you know the device name, but you're not quite sure what category it fits into, You always have the ability down here at the very bottom to, you have a search field here. So let's just search for battery. We didn't know where it's, this one we're lucky because there's a batteries folder. But if we didn't know and we kind of wanted to refine our search, we can just type in what we're looking for here and it'll refine and kind of filter out those results. So I can see here that I've got 3 batteries at my disposal just from using this quick select search field here. I'll go ahead and double click this and open it up just so you can kind of get a feel for the environment. So now that I have the symbol open up here, so you can see that there's just a bunch of lines here that kind of create that symbol. And again, this is where we would think of it as like an AutoCAD block, if you will. This is basically this would be the block editor. So this is where you're going to create the lines and the pins and the devices and the text and the callouts that you need for the symbol that it would then later be pulled into the diagram or the wiring design at the next stage down the road. And again, you can see that this kind of broken down, and none of this stuff is created by the user or even the administrator. The system's already intelligently, if you create a pin, it's going to create a folder, and all your pins will be in that folder. If you create a block, all those blocks will be enclosed in the blocks folder. So very handy, very user-friendly to use. But this is all relevant to just this one specific diagram. But we do have another option that we can further kind of examine things before we want to look at them. So if I click on the symbols tab here, you can see that I also still have access to all these different quick start libraries. So if I pull down this IEC, so we were up here before in the design window kind of looking for batteries and stuff. But down here, I can actually expand these windows. And here, if I want to kind of get a quick view of what these icons look like before I ever start working at them, you can see I'm getting this little preview down here at the bottom. So I can do that anytime that I have an active symbol open over here. So I've selected it up here in my window. Once that's active and open, now I have access to go through all these different libraries and kind of look at these things and see what's available before ever spending the time opening them up or determining whether or not that's definitely the one I want to use or not. So again, here's a couple of different battery things that we have in this quick starter electrical library. So again, it's all very easy to find the existing components that work. But let's just say, for instance, that you're looking for batteries. You've looked all through all the different libraries here, and you're just not finding the battery that you specifically need. Or maybe your industry or your organization uses some fancy new battery that's not yet an industry standard. So you have the ability to go ahead and create these symbols too, and very easily, I might add. So if I go ahead and click this, I've got the batteries folder open here. So if I just right click on this battery, I have the option to just click new symbol right from here. So I know that it's a battery, it's a part of the IEC, or maybe whatever library you're in. If I know I want to create a battery and it's going to be in this folder, I just right click, I'm just going to say new symbol, and I'll kind of step you through this. So first we're going to give it a name. We'll say it's a battery test 03. And again, we can select what type of symbol type it is. So we can do a back shell, a comment, if it's just a comment that we want to be able to bring into a diagram, a device, a ground, or a splice. So let's just say this battery is a device. And again, I can use the physical scale, or I can control it based on the sizing of the layout itself. But I'm going to go ahead and just leave it all as default. Okay. And now I'm in the new symbol kind of generation. And again, here is your origin marker. So this center point right here is going to be the origin point of when you bring this symbol into a diagram. So it's important to kind of keep that point as reference, knowing that that point right there will be the point that you're pulling that into the diagram. So again, we can also hit new here to create a new symbol if we wanted to. But let's just go ahead and, now that we have access to the symbol, the system's already just given us the tools that are available to draw. So again, very simple, easy to use drafting tools here. So I've got a line, I've got a rectangle, circle, all kinds of very simple little, if I just need to do text, I can do that. I got a couple different options for text. Now I even have the ability to add pins, links, and datums. So it's all very cool. So let's kind of back up a little bit here. So before we start this symbol, let's say that a customer is new to the software, but they've been designing in electrical components for years. They've been using AutoCAD or some other ECAD system, and they've already got a whole library of parts or symbols that they use that they've customized. They spent the time to customize all this stuff. We also have the ability here. If I go to the Solid Edge tab, go to Files, I can actually import DXFs. So, for instance, if customer X has been using AutoCAD to do all of their unintelligent schematics using blocks and lines and spent a lot of time creating that stuff, but now we have the ability to use or reuse those existing symbols from other platforms by importing the DXF right into the symbols user interface. So it literally just pulls all that line work, all that text of that DXF that you've created, and depending on what ECAD system you're using, you may have to convert that over to a DXF in order to pull that into this system. But you simply scale it and add any necessary elements to convert this dumb geometry into intelligent geometry. So again, once we utilize and we set this geometry up here from, say, AutoCAD as a DXF, we can then go in and add all of the pins and all of the other electrical components that are going to allow us to do testing on these diagrams, to control the diagrams, and even simulate the connectivity of the design in the design environment for validation purposes. Now, AutoCAD cannot do that. So just keep in mind, you have the freedom to either pull in all of your legacy symbols from other systems, or you can create new symbols from scratch, or you can take some of these really close symbols that you have found in the library and then just save those, copy those as your own, and then add the necessary components that you need to make it fit for your ability. So now I'm going to hop back over to the Home tab here where I've got all my drawing tools here. So I'm just going to create a simple little battery. And again, I want to use this this kind of insertion point as the 0 point for my little design here. I'm going to say I want to pull it up this way. So that way when I bring this symbol into the diagram, that this bottom left-hand point is my origin point. So I'm just going to add some simple geometry here. And you can see once I got the geometry selected, I'm automatically snapping to either the midpoint or the endpoint. So again, it's throwing me some intelligence in there for me to utilize as I'm kind of drawing this stuff. So and again, I can go up here to L. Each one of these has a shortcut, as you can see here. So if I just type in L on my keyboard, I'm back into the line command. So I'm just going to create some simple geometry here. And you can see everything's kind of snapping to a grid. So that's another important, vital kind of element to the system, is everything snapping to a grid, and that's going to kind of really control and enable our intelligence for the software. So again, please forgive me. This is kind of not a fantastic sketch, but I'm just kind of generically I want my negative representation over here. Then over here, I'll do my positive symbols. And again, you can kind of see where I'm snapping, and maybe the snapping is a little too much for what I need to do. So I could just go down here and kind of toggle on and off object snapping and my snap to grid features here, so I can get a little bit more control out of the. So you can see now I'm not snapping to that middle point. So now I can kind of. And there you can see I just simply very quickly created a generic symbol here. Nothing fancy, but kind of just so you understand the actions here. Now, if there was some sort of logo or something here, I have the option to attach that. I can do basically add an image here. I've got all kinds of options here. I know there's no pins on a battery, but let's just say, for instance, I needed to add a pin here and maybe another. If I hit P over here. We've got 2 pins there. So again, kind of as I mentioned earlier, I've got this crude geometry in here, but I created 2 intelligent features here. So I got 2 pins. It created a pin folder and then is dropping in those pins for easy identification and organization for me to have access to right here and there. So now I'm done with my symbol. I simply just save it. And now I have a symbol saved into this Quick Start IEC library under the batteries folder. And I've already got this diagram open. And let's just say we're working through a project and then we're halfway through and we realize, oh crap, that symbol that I needed wasn't there. So I sidetracked a little bit. I had to go and I had to create a new symbol. And I've saved it to the library now. Now the next step is to be able to have access to this library without having to close the software down and reopen it. So within the Solid Edge design platform, we have a couple of options here. So we can refresh. Let's go ahead and refresh. If I drop this down, you can see I can refresh also just the symbols library. So let's go ahead and update refresh the symbols library. And then I'm going to go here. There's another update feature we have here. Now this is typically just if you make a change to the border. Symbols is grayed out because I just did it, but I like to go ahead and just hit that anyway. I don't really know if it's even doing anything or not, but so now if I go over to the Solid Edge tab, everything is refreshed, or at least it should be. So now if I go over to the Symbols tab and go down to the IEC, the Quick Start, and open up my batteries, we can see that now we have this battery 3 test. Here's a quick preview of it. So now I can just drag and drop. I can bring this thing over, put it wherever I need to put it. And again, maybe this scale isn't perfect, but I can manipulate that and change that all within the symbols library. So again, just a very simple way to create a symbol and then have access to it to pull into a diagram all within like a minute or so. Let's go back into the symbols library again because I still have this open over here. I'll go ahead and just close this part out. Now let's just say, we're finding, we're working in the system, we're working in the application now, we're just finding that most of the stuff that we have to create really aren't relevant to the IEC standard library or the ANSI or the transportation library, and you want to create your own library. So you want to create your own kind of library so you can pick and pull from all of your custom parts. It's very simple. So again, we went through opening the library and kind of pulling from that existing stuff, creating some new stuff. But create a new library. We just simply create a new name. We'll just say library test. Okay, and then we're going to tell it what kind of library it is, whether it's a symbol or a border. Again, we're just going to stick with symbols for now. Hit OK. And now we've got a blank library. So now if I just right click here, I can go to new symbol, and I'm just going to start cranking in these symbols. I'm going to go and I'm going to either pull in the DXF of my old symbols or go in and create my new symbols that I need. Or I can actually copy existing symbols from either the IEC that I do kind of need, and I'm just going to create a one-stop shop for all of the symbols that I use on a daily basis. This is where you do that, and that's, again, very simply how you do that. And again, you can delete the libraries, you can edit the symbol library, so you can reconfigure it, you can edit the folders, you can change the names, and then you can just close the library. So all very simple stuff. So this all will populate, and then when you go, so I've created this new library, so now if I close it, go back into open libraries, now I've got this test library. So now I can, library test. And now I can just start pulling directly from that. I can even create that as my default. So every time I hit open library, it just goes ahead and opens up that library test. So that's the basics of the Solid Edge Electrical Symbols user interface and environment and kind of methodology. Let's go ahead and close the symbols for now. And now we're back into our design here. And now let's go back to our launch tool here, and we're going to go into the electrical parts. So again, this is going to be another environment that we're getting access to through or via the harness design software. So this is going to be a little different environment here. And again, I've got this open and I can work inside this environment all while my design diagram back here in the background is all still kind of working. So kind of just for practicality purposes, we've got a couple of quick tools here. We've got a files, action, and help, and then we've got a couple of 3 major pillars or components here within the parts diagram. So before we get started here, I think I always like to kind of just show the about here. This is going to tell you what version that you're on and whether you have any service packs. They're called service packs in the Solid Edge Electrical tool, not maintenance packs. But and then also you have in the diagram, or I'm sorry, in the design platform, you can always go to help here, and you can select whether you want some additional information. Let's say you want a user's guide for the electrical parts, or you want or the user guide for the symbols environment. You can do those here, and then you can open up in PDF, or if you don't have Adobe on your machine, you can open these up in HTML. So again, Siemens has always given you access to everything you need right, within one click. So, if you need some additional information, this would be a great place to start. Let's go back in here and let's populate back into the solid edge electrical parts diagram. So let's look at these three components here, or let's look at these three pillars here. So the component folder consists of the facilities to create and manage components. So if we go into one of these here, we just double click. This is where you're going to create the part number, and then you're going to add all of the attributes that are required to create a new part. So you can copy component details, delete any of the obsolete ones. So this is a kind of a one-stop shop for your components management. The codes folder consists of various facilities to create and manage user-defined records for reusable attributes. So these reusable attributes are the company and process-specific codes that can be easily reused when you're creating and managing your various components. Once created, they don't need to be retyped and recreated every time. So you can use these previously created codes and components, which is going to greatly reduce your chance of typo errors and maybe duplicating parts. So one really key component of this software is that it doesn't allow you to have multiple parts with the same part name. That goes for the parts environment, that goes for the symbols environment, and that even goes for the design of the schematics and the wire harnesses. So the system will not allow you to have two parts or two elements with the same name. And you'll be quickly, if you're familiar with the other demonstrations that I've done, you're quickly advised that hey, this part is red, it's somewhere else it already exists somewhere else in the system. So pretty key component there. And then we have the companies here. So the company folders are where you register the various companies that you guys interface with. So your OEMs, your tier ones, or your components suppliers. So again, there's not really much to show here. This would be where you would configure parts. So close that out here, and now we'll go back over to the slide deck. So let's talk a little bit more about the Solid Edge Electrical user roles. So the Solid Edge Electrical librarian will typically create the components from scratch and then gradually defines the attributes based on the intended purpose of that component. But the day-to-day designer is not really concerned with the creation of these parts or symbols. He or she simply just wants to get into the system and use these existing components that have already been created to pull into their diagrams. Think of this librarian as your Solid Edge Electrical CAD admin. He or she is typically responsible for the creation, development, and the management of these parts, symbols, or borders for the users to utilize on a day-to-day basis in their diagrams. In some cases, the Solid Edge Electrical librarian or the CAD administrator and the user is the same person. So it makes it a little easier, but in most cases they are not. Someone's usually designated the controller or the admin of the embedded database to kind of help better refine, especially when you have multiple users. You don't want 3 users kind of creating their own libraries and pulling from different series of parts and revisions and versions of parts. So the CAD administrator, the Solid Edge, embedded client manager is an important role, and it really keeps the intelligence intact and some of the true benefits of the software in place. So in summary, we discussed the 2 different installation types available within the Solid Edge Electrical design. We examined the Solid Edge Electrical symbols and parts user interfaces for a better understanding of how they're administered, maintained, and used in the downstream process. And then finally, we reviewed the 3 pillars of the parts environment. This concludes today's Solid Edge Wire and Harness Design Library Admin webinar. We'll be adding much more content on this subject in the very near future. So stay tuned and please subscribe to our YouTube page for a ton more free, extremely valuable, in my opinion, demonstrations such as this. And at this time, we'll take any questions that you may have. And as always, if there are no questions, please feel free to direct any future questions to the contact information you see here. And again, thank you all for attending and your time today. Have a great rest of your day.